Hey everybody, it's Hellfire. Welcome back to another This Week in WiXoss, your source for all news for the English and Japanese side of WiXoss. We got some stuff to cover today. We've got on the English side of the game, mostly all the thing we've got is the Grand Prix participation prize. It has been announced. There have been a couple spoilers, but considering at the time of recording, Concord Diva releases this Friday. I'm not going to cover those, especially considering the pre-release, and I know a lot of people have been getting their cases early, so we already know what the entire set has at this point. Just waiting for the official release. On the JP side of the game, the reason why this video got held back just a little bit is a Banlist update that I'm going to cover. The 10th anniversary PRs and their Loth Selectors spoilers, since they're still in the middle of spoiler season. So let's go ahead and get into it on the Japanese side of the game. So on the 19th, the JP Twitter account posted this little tweet saying on June 21st, there will be cards added to Mayu's room for the following formats: Key Selection and All-Star. So nothing for the Diva format. But this has been the first one that they've updated in a while, and probably for good reason. So we're going to go over the cards that have been added before we go over the restrictions. One of them is actually a spoiler, so we're going to cover all of that here. It's actually a spoiler. It's a card that's coming out relatively soon. So here we have Mayu, Wounded Key, Miko. 10th anniversary PR coming out in a art book that releases in July, alongside 7 other cards, but this one already has made the ban list. And, we'll see why here shortly. So, Constant, your center Lurig gets the following abilities. Action, Exceed 1. This turn, Signy and Keys on your opponent's field lose all their abilities and cannot gain new ones. Action can be done during the attack phase. Exceed 2. Target a Signy on your opponent's field that is on a Signy zone and send it to the trash. Your opponent looks at the top 3 cards of their deck. They put up to 1 Signy from amongst them onto their field, and the rest go to the bottom of their deck in any order. And then as an action for this key, you can send it to the Lurig trash. You take an additional turn after this turn, but you skip your next attack phase and your next grow phase. Now, that's honestly kind of tame, considering I think this is the second, it's either the second or the third extra turn card that we've seen, so it's pretty tame until you read the other 2 cards that it goes with. We have, so the other card that made it to the ban list, or the restriction list, is Real Memory of True Feelings. I'm not going to read the first 2 abilities. I'm going to read the highlighted ability. So if you want to know what this card does, if you're watching the video, it's on the screen. If not, the first 2 abilities aren't important, so I'm kind of giving away why this is here. So as an action, once per game, her Honest skill, you pay a coin. Your opponent declares 1 number, and at the end of the turn, if the number of arts used by the opponent this turn is not equal to the declared number, your opponent loses the game. I think it's the only alt win condition that exists in the game. My knowledge, there's probably more, but I'm not that familiar with older formats. So, if you've made the connection as to why this card has made it to the ban list, alongside of the Mayu key, yeah, it's kind of stupid, but anyways, if you're still trying to figure it out, let's put it this way. Let's say I'm playing this center, and I put up this ridiculous board that can deal 4 damage before Lurig attack, and my opponent has 2 life cloth. I'm going to call Honest before I do anything. And my opponent's going to tell me, okay, I need to use 2 arts to stop your whole field because I had to use my big, like, full field stop the turn prior. Alright, your opponent has declared 2 on her Honest skill. You play the Mayu key, and you proceed to immediately send it to the Lurig trash. In doing so, you skip your next attack phase timing, and as we are all aware, there is no timing during the main phase for arts to be played for your opponent. The only time the opponent can mostly play arts on your turn is during the attack phase timing, or if a art has the spell cut in timing. So you sack the key, you proceed to go to your attack phase that gets skipped, go to your end phase, end of the turn hits. Your opponent said 2, they've played 0 arts, they automatically lose the game on the spot. So that's why these 2 cards have made it to the list. And then there's also another one that has made it to the list. Mel Martini. Again, I'm not going to read the first 2 abilities, I'm going to read the last ability of this card. Action, Berserk, pay 3 coins. During the next turn, your opponent cannot use arts, spells, or action abilities, and their Signy must attack if able. So with that Mayu key, you go Berserk, you sack the Mayu key, and now you have free reign to do whatever you want on this turn with no repercussions. Your opponent's not allowed to use arts, they're not allowed to use spells in any capacity, if there even is a during your opponent's turn spell, or any of their action abilities, which is actually kind of huge against some decks. Like, I think the biggest one I can think of is, or like the biggest card I can think of is Zirconium, which has an action to where you can shuffle 10, like I think it's pay 2, shuffle 10 cards back into your opponent's deck to summon this on the field. Your opponent can't use that. And there's probably a lot of other action abilities that like get super stopped. The keys get stopped by it. So you basically get a free reign turn to do basically whatever you want. And if you're able to set up a kill situation, your opponent just can't do anything to stop it, because you've turned off their ability to use arts during the next turn. Not your opponent's next turn, just during the next turn. So these 3 cards have made it to the restriction list. So for the All-Star restriction update, if you're running the Mayu key, you cannot run either of those level 4s that I have mentioned, but you can run both of the level 4s in the same deck. That is fine. Why you would do it, I don't know. But it is perfectly fine to do so. And then for the key, and then only 2/3 of that make it over to key, because that Mel Martini is All-Star legal only, the Rill is key. So going into the key selection restriction update, it's you just can't run the Mayu key and the Rill in the same deck. And that's it for the Banlist update. Like, it's a really interesting one because, again, to my knowledge here, Rill has never really been that much of a top performer, and when you take like a D tier, F tier, bottom tier, like non-existent deck, and immediately shoot it up to S tier, it's kind of gross, like how fast one card can change the entire deck like that. But it's kind of concerning, especially considering like you can declare 0 on the honest turn to make the key useless, but if your opponent can't kill you, or if your opponent can still kill you on that, it's more like a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation. So it's not really like a healthy environment. The Mel is cute in my opinion more than anything, but it's probably almost as bad as the Rill. Mel is already a strong deck to begin with all the cooking stuff. It does have it is very much lopsided matchups most of the time, but that's all we have for the Banlist update. Now on to the spoilers for Loth Selector. So, well, Loth Selector and the 10th anniversary PRs. We're going to cover the rest of the 10th anniversary PRs first. Most of these of what I'm reading will all be mostly All-Star legal only. There are 2 cards that are Diva legal. So we're going to go over the rest of the All-Star legal cards. So we got Cross 10th Row, use timing during the attack phase. If your center Lurig's level is lower than your opponent's center Lurig level, you may grow your center Lurig. Enter abilities of the Lurig you grow into do not activate. Then you target a Rig or Signy on your opponent's field with the same level as your center, and it gets cannot attack until end of turn. This would be the second art, to my knowledge, that grows your Rig additionally. So if you think about it, you can basically reverse the turn order into if you hit like level 4 or level 5, depending on your deck first. Because you can, so if you go first, your opponent's gonna be on level 2. You can use this to go to your level 2. This card would be funny in Diva, honestly, because they're reversing the turn order. Thank God it's not legal in Diva. So it's like you're level 1, your opponent's level 2 because you went second. You use this, now you're level 2, and then your next turn you grow to level 3. So you reverse the turn order on your opponent, and you get your level 3 power spike before your opponent does. It's kind of funny. Next art we've got is Intense Art of the Scorching Sun. Has a use timing of attack phase and spell cut-in if there are more cards in your life cloth than your opponent's life cloth. This card costs 3 less to use. And during this turn, while you have less cards in your life cloth than your opponent's, cards in your life cloth cannot be crushed. So against multi-attacking decks, this card is absolutely huge because your opponent can't just crush cloth. The only deck that this kind of does really nothing against is Guzico in All-Star. Guzico in All-Star has a once per turn ability. You can pay a coin. And anytime you deal damage to your opponent, they have to mill 20. So the reason that this still works is because while dealing damage equals a crush, crushes don't equal damage, if that makes sense. So like I'm still technically dealing damage to my opponent. I just can't crush their cloth, but I can still mill them 20 and force them to trash their cloth if I was playing Guzico. But this is actually a really, really cool full stop if your opponent doesn't have any abilities like that. So it can render an entire turn useless for 5 enter, or at least only be like a 2 damage. Like you can only take 2 damage max for 2 enter, which is really cool. Moving on, we've got Lock 10 Count. Attack phase timing. As you use this art, you can discard up to 3 blue cards from your hand, and this costs 1 blue less for each card you discarded this way. This turn, your opponent cannot attack with their Signy unless they discard 3 cards from their hand. Now, the wording of this effect is a little bit weird, but do keep in mind that this kind of effect affects every single Signy attack. So if your opponent has 0 hand, they can attack you basically 0 times. Can only attack you 1 time for every 3 cards in your hand, with the max hand size being 6. Well, you can only really attack like twice. So this is also a really cool full stop if it goes off, especially being in blue. A lot of blue likes to discard. So if you get your opponent down to like 0 cards in hand, yeah, sure, pay the 3 blue and your opponent just can't deal damage to you like at all, and it's great. For the green art from Midorigo, we got Crossed 10th Grow. Use timing of main attack and spell cut-in. You may pay an additional 3 as you use this art. Choose one. If you've paid the additional 3, you can choose 2 instead. You shuffle all cards in your trash into your deck, then put the top card of your deck to your life cloth, or you have your opponent shuffle all cards in their trash into their deck, but then they put 1 card from the life cloth into the enter zone. So it's kind of a free fresh for you, and you get to heal, but it kind of works as like an early refresh penalty for your opponent, except they still get the cloth in their enter zone, but it does dodge bursts. It's not all a bad card. Like, pay 2 heal is pretty nice. Moving on, we've got the Earth Art Dark Tempest. Use timing of main phase during your opponent's turn if your center Lurig's level is lower than your opponent's center Lurig. This art gets use timing attack phase and costs 2 and 2 black more to use. Target a Lurig on your opponent's field and it gets -1 level until the end of turn. So the huge thing about this is you could quite literally like trash out your entire opponent's board just by reducing their level. So there's one Lurig that I can think of that I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, and I'm sorry I can't, but there is a level 5 Lurig that says you can play basically a full field of level 5s and nothing else. Or you can basically play a full field of level 5s, and I think you can ignore limiting it. I think it's a Iona now that I think about it. I don't remember. But imagine like your opponent has this full field of level 5s, and you just like drop this art on them, and now they have no field because their Lurig is level 4, and well, you can't have Signy on the field that are higher level than your Lurig, so you just lose your entire field. It's really funny. Do keep in mind though, with this art, even if you use it during your main phase, if your Lurig's level is lower than your opponent's center, it still costs 2 and 2 black more to use. That additional cost is not limited to just the attack, being able to use the attack phase timing. It just gets the attack phase timing, and then it increases the cost. So like, do keep in mind that that's not mutually exclusive to only using it during the attack phase. I don't think that'd trip up a lot of people, but I feel like it would too, so it's worth pointing out. That's all of the All-Star legal cards. So the 2 Diva legal cards, we've got Victim Memories. It's just a shame that this one doesn't have a 10 pun in there somewhere, but the effect makes up for it. Look at the top 10 cards of your deck, add up to 1 card from amongst them to your hand, then shuffle the rest of your deck. And the Life Burst does the same thing. Look at 10, add 1, the rest get shuffled back into your deck. This card is cute more than anything. I love this card because I think it's funny. It's also really funny. I think it's also really funny in a limited format kind of thing. We talk about like cubes, maybe like a funny draft for some reason. There isn't really much else to say about this spell. And then last we have, I think this is the first level 2 6 limit in Diva, and it's a promo. It's funny. Hanyo 2 Retempered, Roaring Flame. Constant, you skip your grow phase. Go figure, you have 6 limit. Why would you need to grow again, right? During your turn, the Signy on your center Signy zone gets plus 5k. Once per game? Yeah, once per game. Pay 3 red. This turn, the next time this Lurig attacks, your opponent cannot guard. So this is the first of a style of play in previous similar to previous formats called 2-stop. So in All-Star there exists like some decks that will stop at like their Lurig's level 2 despite that it has no effects, because it quite literally gets carried by the fact that all of the Signy that it runs have some really absurd abilities that can make up for the fact that you're stopping your grows. Also, it does, in most All-Star decks, since they do go to level 4, it gives you access to 2 more arts. In Diva, running this would give you access to 1 more art, since you'd be no longer running a level 3 at that point, so you can just replace the level 3 with any other art. Especially considering in the JP meta right now, a lot of the decks have been, like I've said before, a full assist line, and then you just run a level 0, like whatever level 0 you want, so you can still use pieces. in your deck, and then you just run 2 arts. Running this, now you can run 3 arts alongside that, so it'd be really interesting to see if this promo shakes up the meta in any way. I think it would. Be having access to a 3rd art seems really good, especially considering the arts that we saw during the 10th anniversary spoil or 10th Recollect Selector spoiler season. There are a lot of really fun and powerful arts in red, so being able to run an additional one of those, I think is going to, like, this promo is going to be really good. I think it might actually shake up the meta a little bit. And the last but not least, oh wait, no, I can't count. That is promo number 8 for the art book. So we're going to move on to our Loth Selector spoilers. So we're starting to see the rest of the additional support signy for the prior Lurigs in Recollect. So we have Drone Code Heart. At the beginning of your attack phase, if you have used a spell, your opponent discards 1. And when this attacks, your opponent discards 1. And for Life Burst, you choose 1. You down 2 field on your opponent's. You down 2 signy on your opponent's field, or you draw 1 card. We've got Porcupine Phantom Beast Deity. At the beginning of your attack phase, target a signy on your field, and it gets the following until end of turn. When this signy crushes a card in your opponent's Life Cloth by Lancer or S-Lancer, you may pay 1 and 2 green. If you do, crush 1 card in your opponent's Life Cloth. So it kind of gives a pseudo double crush kind of effect to Lancer-esque effect, or to the Lancer effects that green is notorious for. And I'm kind of jealous of this card because one of my favorite cards in, I think it was P08, whichever one the Guzico came out in, that we have, where it's like, oh, if I crush a cloth, I could pay 5 to crush another. I'm jealous of this card, but it makes sense that it has to be crushed via an ability, so I'm not as jealous anymore. Anyways, Life Burst, choose 1. Target 1 up signy in your opponent's field and vanish it, or enter charge 1. We've got Melon Parfait Code Order. This gets plus 1k for each card underneath this signy. And at the beginning of your attack phase, you may put 3 cards from under this into the trash. If you do, enter charge 2. And on enter, target a number of cards in your trash up to the number of arts in your Lurig trash and put them under this signy. So, say you're playing the full line with 2 arts and 2 pieces. I forget what I called it earlier. I'm so sorry. So you actually get like 2. If you're running the Hanyo, you can't run this anyway. Well, you can run this, but there's no point. So 2. If you're just doing your normal like single center Lurig, you can, I think it's up to 6 cards underneath this, so it's kind of interesting how much like this card changes when depending on the deck. So like if you're running what Japan is a lot of running, like the full line, this gets the 12, and then with the only a single center, this gets up to 16k, and then you can enter charge twice with this staying on the field. And wrapping it off, we have Hades, Doomed Evil Queen. When the signy leaves the field by a cost or effect, you put the top 3 cards of your deck into the trash. Then target up to 1 signy amongst the cards that were put into the trash by this effect, and pick 1. You can either add it to your hand, or you may pay a amount of colorless equal to that signy's level. If you do, you put that signy onto your field. Downed, its enter abilities do not activate. Now, I'm not entirely sure if this is a mistranslation, but with the way this is currently worded, if your opponent trashes this for one of their effects, you get this auto. With the way that this is translated, if this works exactly the way as intended, you still get this auto if your opponent trashes this off of your field. So, and that's not saying for like shoot. I'm talking about like your opponent has an effect that says, hey, trash something on your opponent's field. So you would still get this effect, and you could effectively stop an attack with it, potentially. And then Does it have a life burst? I forgot to grab the text. Choose a Signy in your trash without a guard. Either return it to the field or return it to your hand. So I forgot to get the text, but I know what that burst is. This is fine. So going on to the Larig support for this set, kicking it off with the Amusers because we left off with the Dragons last time. We have Wind Chime, first play. When this Signy attacks, target a Signy in your opponent's field, and you may put one other Amuser Signy from your field to the bottom of your deck. If you do, the targeted Signy gets -5k until end of turn. We have Goldfish Scooping, first play. Auto at the end of your attack phase. If an Amuser Signy left your field during this attack phase, you may put this Signy on the bottom of its opponent's deck. If you do, draw one card, then you may put one level 2 or lower Amuser from your hand onto your field downed, and that Signy's entered. Do not activate. Life Burst, target a Signy in your opponent's field, down and freeze it, and then draw a card. Level 2 Amusers, we got Water Balloon, second play. During your attack phase, when this leaves the field, you may put one level 1 Amuser Signy from your hand onto the field downed. That Signy's enters, do not activate. And at the end of your turn, if this entered the field by your effect this turn, draw one, or your opponent discards one. We've got Water Gun, second play. During the attack phase, when this leaves the field, you may do the same thing as the level 2. You may put one level 1 Amuser Signy from your hand on the field down, enter, doesn't activate. Life Burst, target a Signy in your opponent's field, down and freeze it, and your opponent discards one from their hand. It's like I'm looking at the same card, just one with a Life Burst, one without it. Amuser package is looking really good. I'm not gonna lie, I really like how the Amuser package is looking right now. This is probably just because I'm a Guzuko player at heart, but I do. These are really cool effects. Like, you get benefits off of killing off your field, and you just get to replace it with the amount of cards that you'll probably have in your hand because you're playing blue. Continuing on, we've got Bonsai, natural plant. When this attacks, if there's another plant Signy on your field, enter charge 1. We got Rosary, natural war plant. While there is a plant in your enter zone, this Signy gets +3k. At the beginning of your main phase, target up to one level 2 plant Signy in your enter zone, and it swaps position with this Signy on your field. Life Burst, enter charge 1 the next time you would take damage from a Signy. Instead, you do not. Moving on with more plants. Ikebana, natural plant. At the beginning of your attack phase, if you have another plant on your field, enter charge 1. Mistletoe, natural plant. While there is a plant in your enter zone, this gets +3k. At the beginning of your main phase, target up to one level 3 plant in your enter zone, and it swaps position with this on your field. Life Burst, you target a Signy in your opponent's field with 7k power or higher. You may pay 1 if you do vanish that Signy. So plants are shaping up to be almost kind of similar to, I want to say, II's Amuser stuff back for All-Star. Being able to, with some of these, being able to swap into stronger Signy so long as they survive the turn. If they do, that's fantastic. Because you just get to swap stuff out for free. You don't have to worry about keeping some of the level 2s or like the level 3s in your hand if they end up in your enter zone. You have them for later if they manage to stay on the field long enough. Or if you're able to put them back on, if there's a way to put them back on the field after they've been removed, and then you can just get the stuff out of your enter again. You don't lose any enter for this too, which is also the amazing part. So we have our Labyrinth support. We've got Shutter Guy, Code Maze. Once per turn during your turn, when a Signy in your opponent's field moves to a different zone, target a Signy in your opponent's field and gets -2k until end of turn. We have Haunted House. On enter, put a Labyrinth Signy from your enter zone to trash. Target a Signy in your opponent's field and gets -3k until end of turn. And you may move that Signy to another Signy zone. Life Burst. Target a Signy in your opponent's field and gets -8k. So this is a -5k combo on its own. So you play the Shutter Guy, you play the Haunted House, you pay the Labyrinth, you target something in your opponent's field, -3k, you move it, it gets the -2k again from Shutter Guy. So that's a -5k combo in its own. Haunted House being minus 3k anyways is also really good. I think most things actually that you would want to get rid of are 3k or less, but you can stretch to 5k with these 2 cards alone. We got Okayama Castle, Code Maze. Once per turn, during your turn, when a Signy in your opponent's field moves to a different Signy zone, target Signy in your opponent's center Signy zone, and you may pay a Labyrinth to give it minus 8k. We have Abaque, Code Maze. Once per turn during your attack phase, when another Labyrinth enters your field, you may rearrange the positions of all Signy in your opponent's field as you like, and then on enter, pay a colorless and a black to target a Labyrinth Signy in your trash and add it to your hand. So this is another really funny combo, because like, oh, if your opponent goes, I'm not going to leave anything in my center for Okayama Castle. You still play Okayama Castle, you play Abaque, Code Maze, do a little swappy swap, and all of a sudden, wow, yeah, your opponent has something in their center Signy zone, minus 8k. After, of course, you pay out your Labyrinth Signy. Moving on, we're going to have the off-colored support for all of our classes in the set. So we've got Acheron as your angel. During your opponent's turn, while you have 4 more cards in your hand, this gets plus 2k. We have Ishikumadoji, Jade Evil. At the beginning of your main phase, you may put the Signy from the field into the trash and pay a colorless. If you do, your opponent puts 1 Signy from their field into the enter zone. You may down this as an action, and they'll get plus 4k until the end of your opponent's next turn. Life Burst. Enter charge 1 the next time you would take damage from a Lurig. Instead, you do not take that damage. And then for the spell for angels and demons, we have Imagine Bicker. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add a angel or a demon Signy from amongst them to your hand or to your field, and then the rest go on the bottom of your deck in any order. And then as a Life Burst, target an up Signy on your opponent's field and return it to the owner's hand. This spell is really nice. I like this spell because it could be whatever is in at least the top 3 cards of your deck. So if you have a good idea what's up there, it'll pay off super nicely. For the dragon support, we have Japanese Gecko, Phantom Dragon. When this attacks, unless your opponent pays 1, you look at the top 3 cards of your deck to add a dragon Signy from among them to your hand, and the rest go to the bottom of your deck in any order. And we have Sea Snake, Phantom Dragon. When this attacks, your opponent discards a card from their hand unless they pay 1. And then as a Life Burst, you target a rig on your opponent's field and down it. That's a pretty good Life Burst. And I think the fact that that can burn away any kind of either hand or enter is kind of interesting. For the dragon spell, we have Collision of the Roaring Dragon. It's 1 red. Target a dragon Signy in your field. It gets the following until end of turn. When this attacks, target a 12k or lower on your opponent's field and vanish it unless your opponent pays 3. And as a Life Burst, vanish it up Signy on your opponent's field. Amuser support, we've got Shadow Puppet, first play. Action, pay 1, send this Signy to the trash to play a level 2 or higher Amuser Signy in your trash to the field. You have Toy Theater at the end of your turn. If an Amuser Signy enter the field by your effect this turn, this Signy gets plus 5k cross turn. And then Life Burst, target a Lurig on your opponent's field and it can't attack until end of turn. For the Amuser spell, we've got Bunny Charge. Draw 2. You may discard a card from your hand, and if you do, at the end of your next attack phase, you may put 1 level 2 or lower Amuser Signy from your hand onto the field, and that Signy's enter abilities do not activate. And as a Life Burst, target up to 2 Signy in your opponent's field and down them. This spell is pretty good too. Not just because the artist is goated, but this could just be a straight draw too. You can do multiples of it. I like this spell. Plant support. We've got Momiji, natural plant. At the beginning of your attack phase, target one Signy in your opponent's field with 5k power or lower, and you may pay one plant out of your enter zone. If you do, vanish that Signy. We have Dry Leaves, natural plants. At the beginning of your attack phase, target a plant in your trash, and you may down this up Signy. If you do, put that Signy into the enter zone. And Life Burst, target a Signy in your opponent's field, and you may pay a colorless. If you do, that Signy gets minus 12k until the end of turn. And then for the plant spell, we have Leaf Blade. Target a plant on your field, and it gets a following ability until end of turn. At the beginning of your attack phase, target a Signy in your opponent's field with power lower than or equal to this Signy's power. You may down this up Signy. If you do, send that Signy to the enter zone. And then Life Burst, enter charge 1, then choose a Signy in your enter zone, add it to your hand, or put it onto the field. And wrapping it up with off-color Labyrinth, we have Flower Arch Code Maze. While this is in your center, this gets plus 4k, and on enter, you can rearrange of all Signy in your opponent's field as you see fit. And we have Red Brick Code Maze. During your turn, once per turn, when a Signy in your opponent's field is put in front of this, if that Signy has 3k or less power, it gets vanished. And Life Burst, target a Signy in your opponent's field with 12k or less power, and you may pay 1 to vanish that Signy. And then for the Labyrinth spell, we've got Slashing Miracle. Choose one. Choose a Signy in your opponent's field. This turn, Signy that are... choose a Signy zone on your opponent's field. This turn, Signy that are in that zone get minus 3k. Or you can target a Labyrinth in your trash and add it to your hand. And then for Life Burst, target up Signy in your opponent's field and gets minus 15,000 power until the end of turn. So going off of all these spoilers alone, I think the strongest two decks that are come out of this, and is totally not biased to the fact that I play both of these archetypes to some degree in All-Star, I think the strongest decks coming out of this are going to be probably Labyrinth and Amusers. Like, hands down, because of all the, like, fun and free, like, removal that they basically have. We're still in spoiler season. The set does release next week, so there'll be one more video full of spoilers for Loth Selector before it officially releases. And that's going to wrap it up for our Japanese section here today. And moving on to the English news section, the only thing that we have realistically is the announcement of our participation prize for Vegas. We've got this really, I love this mat. No, this mat is beautiful. I think it's I honestly think it is leagues above the Utol's mat that was the Florida participation prize. Multiple reasons, biggest one being it doesn't have the god-awful text and the bars on the sides of the mat, and while I do like the zone inclusions on the mat as well, especially considering they did take the time to put Rue in front of some of the zones to make her like stand out and have this like really cool 3D effect. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing this in person and seeing everybody else in person at the Las Vegas GP on July 20th. So as of current, there are 56 tickets remaining, which means we have 74 players signed up. I would love to see that number go higher. I would love to see the 100 people that we had for the first GP, and even then some. I do understand that travel is kind of rough in the summer sometimes, especially going back to Vegas. It was pretty hot there last time, but it is definitely worth it for multiple reasons. Seeing as, you know, now top two get to go to Mugen Shoujo in February of 2025 to compete for glory of being the best selector in the world. So that's going to wrap it up for this week's video. I will see you all next week in This Week in Recross. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Everything helps out. Good old YouTube algorithms and such. And I will see you guys in the next video. Again, thank you for watching, and thank you for listening.